A Midsummer Night's Dream, for iHearShakespeare. Believed to have been written in 1595 and just after Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream presents a world of well-balanced ideas and pairs that aren't so much in opposition as they are in desirably different relationships. To begin with, the lyrical title begins by placing the play during the season of the longest days when the heat can cause all sorts of curious behavior, from becoming delusional to fainting, but then points to nighttime when mischief and merrymaking are at their height, and then the play loses all boundaries by concluding with the word dream. Already our heads are spinning and the possibilities seem all too tenable. A Midsummer Night's Dream is one of the few plays that Shakespeare wrote that doesn't have a direct source. Of course, Shakespeare was familiar with much literature of the time. Certainly he knew of Ovid's Metamorphoses, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, English folklore, all of which probably came to bear on his writing for this particular play, but on the whole, this is one of Shakespeare's more unique creations. Set in ancient Athens, the play takes us beyond the rational realm of common cultural institutions of manners and niceties and into the world of the nearby irrational forest where anything can and will happen. There are three principal sets of characters: the upper class, the mechanicals or laborers, and the otherworldly fairies. The play begins by introducing us to Hippolyta and Theseus, who are soon to be married. Hippolyta, it would seem, has resigned herself to living the rest of her life as a domesticated wife, a far cry from her wild Amazonian roots. The characters of Hippolyta and Theseus are not of so much interest to us as people, but more so as to what they represent. The rational and orderly Theseus has chosen for his bride the wild and untamed queen of the Amazons, Hippolyta, both from ancient Greek legend, now brought to a contemporary setting. Theseus and Hippolyta also serve as a plausible reason as to why the fairy king and queen, Oberon and Titania respectively, have journeyed to this particular location, for it may be that they wish to visit and bestow their blessing upon their upcoming marriage. The play initially piques our interest with Hermia and Lysander, two lovers who must go to extremes in order to be married, but during the course of the play, we come to realize that the character who is most compelling and curious is Bottom, for while he lives in the world of the mortals as a mechanical, he is the only character who delves into the world of the fairies, and by play's end must be recognized as one who has crossed into another plane of existence and come back again. True, Bottom is transfigured, or at least partially transfigured, into a donkey. Bottom nevertheless gets the privilege of interacting with the fairies and even has the honor of receiving Titania's praises and affection. Bottom, then, is one of Shakespeare's most sublime and delicate characters, whose words and actions are best appreciated for their subtlety, peacefulness, and childlike innocence. And now, let's begin Act 1, Scene 1 of A Midsummer Night's Dream, for iHearShakespeare. Act 1, Scene 1 shows Theseus, Duke of Athens, eager for his wedding day and night so that he may enjoy his new bride, Hippolyta, properly. His lusty comments are interrupted by Aegeus, who has come full of vexation to enlist the help of Theseus. Aegeus wishes for his daughter, Hermia, to be married to Demetrius rather than Lysander, who has bewitched the heart of Hermia. Aegeus even goes so far as to invoke the ancient law of Athens that his daughter do as he wishes or be put to death. Hermia asks Theseus about her options if she should refuse to marry Demetrius, to which Theseus replies, either to die the death or to abjure forever the society of men. In other words, death or become a nun. Left alone to ruminate their predicament, Lysander and Hermia devise a plan to seek the aid of Lysander's aunt, who lives out of the jurisdiction of Athens' law. Once there, they can be married and so escape the draconian grasp of Hermia's father, who, you'll remember, is Aegeus. We next meet Helena, who is in love with Demetrius. The two girls discuss and compare how their affections are received by their respective love interests. Demetrius scorns Helena while Lysander dotes on Hermia. Hermia divulges her plan to run away and marry Lysander, which will hopefully mean that Demetrius will forget all about her and so fall in love with Helena. Impatient to win the heart of Demetrius, Helena decides to tell him that Hermia and Lysander are running away to be married. Helena concludes the scene alone, contemplating the nature of love, observing, Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind, and therefore is winged Cupid painted blind. Scene 2 introduces us to the local artisans or mechanicals, including Quince, Snug, Bottom, Flute, Snout, and Starveling, who have gathered to begin planning for the interlude, Pyramus and Thisbe, which they will perform at Theseus and Hippolyta's wedding. Peter Quince, the leader, distributes the roles to the others, and Bottom, so confident in his acting abilities, suggests that he play all the roles. Quince mandates that Bottom must play no other but Pyramus, opposite Flute, as Thisbe. Quince concludes the meeting by stating that, in order to keep their play a surprise, they will meet in the woods to rehearse. Here concludes Act 1 of A Midsummer Night's Dream for I Hear Shakespeare. Act 2, Scene 1 takes us into the fairy world where Puck is speaking with a fellow fairy. Puck alerts us to the conflict that exists between the fairy king and queen, Oberon and Titania. Titania has stolen an Indian child and taken him into her care, and Oberon wishes to have the boy to become one of his servants. Sure enough, Titania and Oberon share the stage and begin arguing over the Indian boy. During their confab, we learn that Oberon has had a sexual affair with Hippolyta, and Titania has likewise enjoyed Theseus. When Titania refuses to give up the boy, Oberon vows vengeance and instructs Puck to find a certain flower whose juice, once placed on someone's eyes, will cause that person to fall in love with the first living thing he or she sees. Puck exits, and Demetrius and Helena enter. Oberon eavesdrops on their conversation, which consists of the degree to which Helena loves Demetrius and Demetrius hates Helena. As Demetrius and Helena exit, Oberon determines that this pair will be united before they leave the woods. Puck returns with the flower, and Oberon commands him to find Demetrius and anoint his eyes with the flower's juice. Scene 2 takes us back to Titania and her loyal fairies, who are commanded by their queen to sing her a lullaby. Titania falls asleep, and Oberon arrives and places the flower's juice into her eyes while chanting a love spell. Oberon takes his exit, and Lysander and Hermia enter. Weary from traveling, Hermia requests that they take a break and sleep. Lysander wishes that they share a bed, but Hermia refuses, telling Lysander to lie further away. As the two doze, Puck enters and reasons that Lysander must be the man Oberon wished to have anointed with the flower's juice, since he, Lysander, is dressed in weeds of Athens. Puck exits as Helena and Demetrius enter. Helena continues professing her love for Demetrius, while he remains generally disgusted by her. Demetrius finally leaves the scene, and Helena comes across the sleeping Lysander, who abruptly awakens, only to fall madly in love with Helena. Lysander professes his undying love for Helena, who can only conclude that he is mocking her. Helena takes her exit, only to be followed by Lysander, who has now forsworn Hermia. Hermia now awakens from her sleep, crying for help as if she was having a nightmare. Unable to find Lysander, Hermia sets off into the woods in search of her loved one. Here concludes Act 2 of A Midsummer Night's Dream for I Hear Shakespeare. Act 3, Scene 1 finds the group of mechanicals gathering in the woods to rehearse their play, Pyramus and Thisbe, which, by the way, is a modified and condensed version of Romeo and Juliet, which Shakespeare wrote within the same year as A Midsummer Night's Dream. It just so happens that they have assembled near where Titania is slumbering. As the men are beginning their rehearsal, Puck enters, invisible to the men, and decides that he will play tricks on them. Just before Bottom is to make his entrance as the character Pyramus, Puck transforms Bottom's head into that of an ass, a donkey. When Bottom enters, the other men run away, terrified of what has happened to their friend. Unaware that he has been transformed, Bottom deduces that the men are simply playing a trick on him. Bottom begins singing a song to comfort himself and, in doing so, awakens Titania, who declares her love for the grotesquely transformed man. Bottom suggests that it might be a good idea for him to get out of the woods. Titania will have none of that, and, to make him feel more welcome, calls upon several fairies to attend to his needs. Desirous that Bottom should come to her bower, Titania concludes the scene quipping, "Tie up my lover's tongue, bring him silently." Scene 2 takes us back to Oberon, who is curious as to what happened to Titania after he squeezed the flower's juice into her eyes. Puck reports that she fell in love with an ass, and further explains that he did put the flower's juice into the man's eyes as Oberon requested. Demetrius and Hermia next enter. Demetrius professes his love and devotion to Hermia, while Hermia expresses her scorn and derision for Demetrius. Hermia makes her escape, while Demetrius finds that he must sleep due to physical exhaustion. Puck admits that Hermia is the woman he saw earlier, but this Demetrius is not the man. Frustrated, Oberon sends Puck away to bring Helena to him, while Oberon himself applies the flower's juice to Demetrius's eyes. Puck returns with Helena, who is being chased by Lysander, still under the flower's spell. Oberon and Puck watch as Lysander articulates his passion for the bewildered Helena. Demetrius awakens from his nap, sees Helena, and falls madly in love with her. Lysander and Demetrius argue over who loves Helena more, all to the confusion of poor Helena. Hermia soon enters and is confused as to why Lysander has had such a dramatic change of heart in favor of Helena. Helena is convinced that this is all a joke at her expense and tries to leave the scene, but Hermia will not let her. Lysander and Demetrius exit to have a fistfight over Helena. Helena makes a run for it, and the now dumbstruck Hermia follows after. Oberon and Puck next devise a plan to set things aright. Puck is to summon a dense fog and lead the men away from each other so no fighting will occur, then apply an antidote to the men's eyes so that they will fall in love with the proper woman. Meanwhile, Oberon will go to Titania and release her from the flower's charm and call a truce with her. The action resumes with Puck leading the men on a wild goose chase until they are all tired and one by one fall asleep on the ground. Likewise, Hermia and Helena become tired in searching for one another and fall asleep on the ground. Puck is now free to apply the antidote to Demetrius and Lysander's eyes, all the while singing a song of reconciliation. Here concludes Act 3 of A Midsummer Night's Dream for I Hear Shakespeare. Act 4, Scene 1 transitions neatly to Titania in her bower, still accompanied by Bottom, whose head is still that of an ass. After her words of praise and adoration, Titania sends her loyal fairies away so that she may sleep with Bottom. Oberon appears and tells Puck that she has agreed to surrender the Indian boy to him. Oberon next releases Titania from the flower's spell. She awakens and confesses that she thinks she was in love with an ass. Oberon directs her gaze to Bottom, who is yet to be transformed to his normal state. She says, "Oh, how mine eyes do loathe his visage now." Oberon next commands that Bottom be returned to his normal self. Now reconciled, Oberon and Titania lead the other fairies in a dance as dawn approaches. The fairies exit, leaving Lysander, Hermia, Demetrius, Helena, and Bottom asleep on the ground. Theseus, Hippolyta, and Aegeus enter the scene as they are up early and hunting in the woods. In due course, they come across the sleeping characters and call for them to speak for their presence in the woods. Lysander admits that he and Hermia came to the woods to be away from Athenian law so that they may be married. Demetrius next admits that he wholeheartedly loves Helena and will not, as was earlier requested by Aegeus, be married to Hermia. While Aegeus is still not entirely contented by the fallout, Theseus decrees that there will be 3 marriages on this day and hold a feast in great solemnity. Finally, Bottom awakens and ponders the faint memory of what has happened, concluding that it should be written down as a ballad and called Bottom's Dream, because it hath no bottom. Scene 2 reunites Bottom with his friends, who offer only the warmest praise for their beloved friend. Here concludes Act 4 of A Midsummer Night's Dream for I Hear Shakespeare. Act 5, Scene 1 opens with Theseus and Hippolyta discussing what has recently transpired among the lovers in the woods. Theseus writes it all off as overactive imaginations shared only by the lunatic, the lover, and the poet. Newly married, Demetrius and Helena, Lysander and Hermia, arrive, and Theseus calls for an entertainment to occupy their time until they can go to bed. Theseus's personal attendant, Philostrate, comes and announces what entertainments there are at hand, each one more silly than the next. After a brief exchange with Philostrate, Theseus declares that they will hear Pyramus and Thisbe. The couples take their seats, and Peter Quince, in the character of Prologue, begins their play. Their play, in similar structure as Romeo and Juliet, is wonderfully comical and is enjoyed by everyone. When the mechanicals' play within a play is concluded, Theseus excuses everyone from the area, stating, "Lovers to bed, 'tis almost fairy time," and Puck takes the stage and describes how, in this late hour, the fairy world comes alive. Oberon, Titania, and the other fairies enter, and they all dance. After their festivities, Puck is once again left alone on stage, who concludes the play and offers, "If we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here while these visions did appear, and this weak and idle theme, no more yielding but a dream. Gentles, do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend. And, as I'm an honest Puck, if we have unearned luck, now to escape the serpent's tongue, we will make amends ere long. Else the Puck a liar call, so good night unto you all." With his epilogue, Puck calls everything that the audience has seen a dream, and so simultaneously welcomes us into the wonderful world of fairies, all the while meaning good night. Here concludes Act 5 of A Midsummer Night's Dream for I Hear Shakespeare.